Motor, pure motor, ma'am.
Yes, patient did not have any sensory anywhere. Everything is motor. Even the bulbar muscles, it is not at all. The patient is appreciating sensation, hot, cold, taste. Only swallowing is affected. So it is purely motor. One. Second, it is asymmetrical.
Yes, ma'am.
Probably LM. It looked like. So purely motor, asymmetrical LM. So that becomes the different information from the history. So pure motor syndromes involving these structures could be muscle disease, myoneural junction disease, or nerve disease. Anything you can. So generally muscle diseases are symmetrical.
Yes, ma'am.
So commonest muscle disease is oculopharyngeal myopathy, which is a close differential diagnosis. It can happen late also.
Yes, ma'am.
Ocular muscles are involved, pharyngeal muscles are involved. So it can be oculopharyngeal myopathy.
Yes, ma'am.
Second, but what are the points we will come to?
Yes,
second is neuromuscular junction. Second, you have got MND, motor neuron disease. Old age, pure motor syndrome, it can be motor neuron disease. Then cranial nerves, we will keep it as the last possibility because there is no sensory. Even though bulbar is involved, the pharyngeal sensations are all right.
Yes, ma'am.
Apparently. So nerve is less likely. So in the order of priority, is it a neuromuscular junction? Is it an oculopharyngeal myopathy? Is it a motor neuron disease? Or is it a cranial nerve? These are the questions. So now only we will differentiate, then we will go to examine. Okay. So many times oculopharyngeal myopathies and neuromuscular junction disorders are miscommunicated between each other. Treatment is different. So how will you differentiate a muscle from neuromuscular junction at this point?
Muscle disorder usually that is symmetrical. There is no
symmetrical.
Episodic weaknesses are usually not present, ma'am.
Yes.
Like diurnal variation.
One is you told symmetry in muscle disease. Neuromuscular junction is generally not symmetrical. Second point you said muscle disease is persistent. Whereas neuromuscular junction is fluctuating.
Yes.
Fluctuations can happen. And third point, fatigability is there in neuromuscular junction. Objective fatigability. That is speech becoming in the nasal tang or drooping becoming narrower palpebral fissure. Not just the patient says, I am feeling tired, let me rest. No. You feel that the speech character changes in the nasal tang and the palpebral fissure becomes narrower. That is neuromuscular junction. So these are the three cardinal important points in the history: symmetry, then fatigability, and fluctuations. Neuromuscular junction, it happens. When muscle disease, it doesn't happen. When you examine, what are the things you will look for keeping these two differential diagnoses? Both do not involve the pupil.
Pupil.
If the pupil is involved, it goes for the nerves. So both of them resemble each other in the sense that they do not involve the pupil. What other things you will examine? When you look at eye movements, very, very important. It is very life-saving in very sick patients. You see, you can never elicit a saccadic or the fast eye movement in a muscle disease. Even though patient may be slowly dragging the eye to the lateral side, there is no fast eye movement, always slow movement only. Whereas in neuromuscular junction, it is a petrol failure, energy failure. So the available range, if you tell him to move fast, he can. So the movement may be only 5 degrees, but that 5 degrees he can generate a fast movement. This will be very useful in bedridden patients. You cannot take them to the EMG lab. He may have heart disease. You cannot do a neostigmine or hydrophonian test. So if you generate a saccade within the available range, it is neuromuscular junction. It means the muscle is not paralyzed. It is only the energy that is filled, and the available energy is used to generate a fast movement. Whereas muscle disease, you can never generate a fast movement. Second point, all of you know that you demonstrate a curtain sign. In neuromuscular junction, you tell the patient to fix for at least maximum period is 5 minutes. Even the minimum weakness is there, but at the end of 5 minutes, you are expecting a drooping.
Drooping.
So curtain sign is fixed at the target. The maximum duration is 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, a drooping comes means it is fatigability. That is called curtain sign. Opposite of that is called yawning sign or peep sign.
Peak sign. Yes.
Peep sign or yawning sign, you tell the patient to tightly close the eye and the eye will open.
Yes.
After some time, the eye opens. That is peep sign. Then you have got plus minus sign. You close one eye, the opposite eye opens. And close the other eye, this eye opens.
Yes.
That is also a neuromuscular junction. Then Cogan's eyelid twist sign.
Yes.
Twitch sign. That is, you tell the patient to slowly follow a finger which you are keeping below.
Yes,
but what you are telling the patient, you have to follow my finger in the speed of my moving finger.
Yes,
that means what? You have to hold back.
Okay.
So you are telling the patient to open the eye. But it is like somebody is pulling a bullock cart, let us imagine. One person is pulling from front. One person is supporting from behind. Who will suffer more? Even though apparently it is pulling forward, the one who is behind will suffer more. Because he has to give maximum force to prevent it back. Similarly, when you tell, move your finger in the speed of my finger, move your eye in the speed of my finger from below, he cannot simply open. He has to hold back and wait for the finger to move. So it is a holding back muscle, which is like the person who is behind the cart. So the holding back muscle is the orbicularis oculi. The lifting muscle is the levator. So when you lift in the speed of your moving finger, the holding back muscle is working more. The lifting eye muscle is working less. So you just slowly move. Halfway through, the orbicularis oculi is holding back. So it loses energy earlier than the levator. So midway through, the eye will open and peep at the, that is called Cogan's eyelid twitch sign. Very, very typical of myasthenia. Not present in all cases, but if it is present, it is very useful. Slowly you have to move. Midway, eye will open. Quickly it will open. That is Cogan's eyelid twitch sign. Then, of course, you know, pseudo-MLF. Because of the asymmetry of the extraocular muscles, one eye may show adduction failure and another eye may show muscle peritic nystagmus. You may think it is pseudo-MLF. You may think it is MLF. That is pseudo-MLF. No? Then, as you said, the cold water, the ice pack, you apply and show a demonstrable improvement in the eye movement. Then, of course, the neostigmine test. Whereas in myopathy, it is symmetrical. None of these signs are there. You can never generate saccades, even though the eye movement may be slow and full. You can never generate saccades, and people are not involved. This is how to differentiate oculopharyngeal myopathy from myasthenia. Why they are mistaken is when you do repetitive nerve stimulation, if there is a typical case of myasthenia and the fatigability is more than 10%, you can call it as myasthenia. So more than 10% fatigability can sometimes happen in oculopharyngeal myopathy. And the senior neurologist or whoever is seeing the patient has not seen the patient. So somebody is telling it is myasthenia and you have shown that more than 10% decrement. So you will diagnose myasthenia and put the patient on cholinergic drugs. A senior person develop cardiac arrhythmia and die. He may be suffering from oculopharyngeal myopathy. And by iatrogenic, this has happened in doctors. It has happened because of the more than 10% decrement is taken as favoring myasthenia, not examined properly. No? And the only thing which helps when the patient comes with atrial fibrillation, ventricular tachycardia, and this was one pediatrician I have seen. She was a lady, she had oculopharyngeal myopathy, and she kept on increasing the dose because she was afraid of, she felt bad to again and again see doctors until I'm not improving. And she developed cardiac arrhythmia, and she developed acute tubular necrosis due to severe hypotension. And she went into peritoneal dialysis and she died of this iatrogenic complication. Instead, she would have lived a little more longer with the muscle weakness. She could have used other assisted mechanisms to swallow. So this is very dangerous. If you have seen one case also. Then at the bedside, the only thing which helped was she did not have any succor. Even within the hours, she was very sick with a cardiac arrhythmia and hypotension and acute tubular necrosis. So somebody is worried whether they can withdraw the anti-myasthenic drugs or continue when arrhythmia is going on. You see. So only point that helped that person, I saw her when she was very sick. She had no succor. I said it is not myasthenia, it is myopathy. So withdraw the drugs. The drugs were doing harm, but still are they indicated for some other cause? So these simple findings will be helpful in one case in your life also, it's very useful. So this is how you differentiate. And motor neuron disease, it will never produce ptosis. See, motor neuron disease can produce bulbar weakness, it can produce LMN, it can produce UMN, tongue can be gone, but ptosis doesn't happen. Ptosis is generally spared in motor neuron disease, so you think it is less likely. And cranial nerves, we don't know. When you examine, people are involved or you find sensation, you may have to think of cranial nerves. The closed DD becomes myopathy versus myasthenia.